Hey, Omnidogs and Omnikittens. This is Omnidog with Omnidog's Vault and Root Beer Reviews. Here's the root beer. I'm sticking with my fave, Frost Top. That's mighty good root beer. What we're going to talk about a little bit today is where I am in my Hellboy readathon. I made it up to Hellboy Volume 5, Library Edition. Look how big this book is. It is some kind of big, beautiful book with big, beautiful art. And the good news is these are long form stories now, as opposed to the short stories that we were getting in books 1 and 2. And that gives us a chance for more character development, more extensive plot, a story that really pulls you in and is well formed and interesting. So I can highly recommend that you keep plugging through. If you've started, don't get discouraged because it does take a while for Hellboy to get going. Those first two books are mostly short stories where Hellboy goes into a situation. It's kind of a punch him up. He says, quit that, and ow, a lot. But in these books, starting with book 3, the library edition, 3, 4, and 5, and the Plague of Frogs books, 1, 2, and 3, which I've read so far, you get long form stories with more character development, and as I've said, and you care more about the character. You're starting to feel Hellboy's humanity, so to speak, and you're really getting an interesting take on the character. Now, these are stories that are written by Mignola but drawn by other artists. They are top-notch creators that he's got working with him. And he's been freed up by not having to do the artwork. He is able to write better stories, I think. And these are big, beautiful pages in these Dark Horse Library editions. They are really, really not very expensive when considering what you get. The quality that you get here is top notch, and they come with a ton of extras. If you're into that, they come with a ton of extras, such as sketches and covers and ideas and all kinds of things. But these are really well done now, and I encourage you, if you've started, to keep going because Volume 5 is where you get a lot of really good long form stories. After Volume 5, um, there's a reading order that goes with the Hellboy universe, and you read Hellboy Weird Tales. These are all stories by other artists and other creators, writers, their take on Hellboy. The only two stories that are in canon, so to speak, that you need to read to keep going are the first two, which are written by Mignola and drawn by somebody else. Actually, they're both drawn by Guy Davis. How Koshchi became deathless. Koshchi became deathless, and Baba Yaga's Feast. Now, the rest of them are written by other writers, other artists, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. I'd say about 50% of the stories in here are kind of meh, 25% are pretty good, and 25% are really good. So that's kind of a low batting average for a book. Um, I would say that this is not an important book that you have to read. Maybe go to the library and find it and read the first two stories. That's really about all you have to do. This book gets about 2 out of 5 root beers, whereas Hellboy Volume 5 gets 4 out of 5 root beers. A lot of really fun art in it, but again, they're shorter stories, so they don't really get a chance to develop much. And that was a little bit of a disappointment, I think. There is a lot of beautiful art, but there's just not enough of it and not enough story to go around a lot of these short stories. So that was kind of a disappointment, but that disappointment washed away when I started reading the next thing, and these are the ancillary titles. The first ones you are supposed to read: Witchfinder Sir Edward Grey is the Witchfinder from London, and these books are great. A lot of people say you don't need to read Hellboy, know anything about Hellboy, to go ahead and read these stories. They stand on their own. I think, for me personally, I enjoyed knowing the Hellboy stories ahead of time, getting introduced to Sir Edward Grey in the Hellboy stories. Um, but these don't necessarily, as people say, they don't have to be read in any particular order. They can be read on their own. But boy, these are good stories. They are the length of the paperback, so it's a full story, really well developed character in Sir Edward Grey. Some of the things that go bump in the night that he's after, he's known as the Witchfinder. Um, they have a really good grasp of the occult kind of feeling without some of they're a lot simpler, and they're a lot more enjoyable, I think, than some of the other stories in Hellboy's universe. I found Witchfinder to be very enjoyable, um, because there's not a lot of kind of the mumbo jumbo uh, kind of stuff that goes on in Hellboy that kind of bogs it down. There's a lot of reference to um, in a different language. There's always incantations in a different language and references to Hellboy as the bop ze bop bidop bop or whatever he is. I can't remember, but these books, these Witchfinder books, are simpler and more fascinating to me than so far any Hellboy book I've read. Ooh, sorry, but it's true in my opinion. These Witchfinder books are really great. There's three of them. I've read through the first two, and I find them highly enjoyable. I think that you will really get a kick out of these, as they are trade paperback length. One story fills a whole paperback, so you really get to know what's going on with Sir Edward Grey, and you get to know the characters that go along with him, and you get to really sink your teeth into a very good long story in both the first two paperbacks, and I assume the third one's going to be the same way. So that's where I am in my Hellboy readathon. Then I actually got a chance to read a book recommended to me by Gabe Infinity Watch. Gabe also has a channel on the Omni Bros Network, and Riley Moore backed him up on what a good book it was, and that is Arkham Asylum: Living Hell. And this is set. You don't really see a whole heck of a lot of Batman in it, because it's not really about Batman. It's about Arkham Asylum and what goes on in it when a financier thinks he's pretty shifty and smart when he gets his trial moved to Gotham City and pleads insanity. Well, he gets the jury to believe him. Unfortunately, in Gotham City, when you're declared insane, you go to Arkham Asylum. Yes, Arkham Asylum is filled with exactly who you think it is: Two-Face and Riddler and Joker, and this guy realizes he made a huge mistake. And it's the adventures that he has to go through when he actually gets into Arkham Asylum with its crooked cops and crazy inmates, and what it's like to be just an everyday citizen in with all those terrifying, crazy, evil geniuses that are all in there and quite capable of murder for no particular reason. It is a really well told story with a lot of fun art, and it is just based on the premise: what if an everyday citizen gets thrown into Arkham Asylum? What would you do? How would you survive? Even if you had all the money in the world, does it matter to those people in there? Not necessarily. And it is a really well told story that's a lot of fun. The Bat doesn't really make much of an appearance. I don't really recall Batman appearing at all in it. Um, but there is a huge litany of bat foes, and you get to meet some of them and go in depth on a lot of them in this story. You get to really know some of Batman's rogues gallery, so to speak. And I can highly recommend you pick this up. It's not expensive. It's a deluxe edition that's still in print. Batman Arkham Asylum Living Hell. This gets 4.5 out of 5 root beers from this guy. I found it highly enjoyable. I can recommend it to you with absolutely no hesitation. If you're a Batman fan, if you're a fan of villains at all, if you're a fan of well written stories, it's by Dan Slott with art by Ryan Sook. Great combination there. I highly recommend it. So, this is OmniDog with OmniDog's Vault. Please leave messages. I always respond to any comments, positive, negative, whatever you like to say. I usually respond. And please feel free to subscribe and let me know your thoughts. And I appreciate your tuning in. It means a lot to me. So peace and love, OmniDog out.